The wind howled through the cold, narrow streets of Eldoria, carrying whispers of old curses and forgotten promises. The city, shrouded in shadow and mist, seemed alive with secrets. Its cobblestone streets reflected the pale moonlight, as if the stones themselves had absorbed centuries of sorrow. In a quiet corner of the city, within a mansion that had once known laughter but now only echoed with silence, Alara sat by a small, cracked window. Her eyes, dark and thoughtful, stared at the forest beyond the city walls. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches twisted and bare. She could hear the distant cries of wolves, sharp and mournful, slicing through the night. The sound made her heart clench, not with fear, but with longing. She had always felt like an outsider in her own life, trapped by the cruelty of those who should have loved her most. Her parents had never hidden their disappointment. From the moment they learned she could not bear children, her life became a shadow of what it might have been. Beauty and intelligence had no power against the weight of infertility in a land where bloodlines were sacred. Alara's father, once a man of soft words, now only spoke in sharp, commanding tones. Her mother's eyes, once warm and gentle, had grown cold and calculating. Tonight, that coldness had reached its peak. Alara's parents had made a decision that would change her life forever. "Alara," her father said, his voice hollow yet firm, "the council has spoken. You are of no use to us here. You must go." Alara's stomach tightened. She had anticipated cruelty, but the words cut deeper than she expected. "Go where?" she asked, though she already knew. "To the market. You are to be sold to a noble who values appearances and obedience. He will take you as a possession. That is your only worth now." Her mother did not speak, but the cold line of her lips and the hard set of her eyes said enough. There was no hesitation, no softness, no hint of regret. They had already decided she was a tool, not a daughter. Alara rose slowly, her movements graceful despite the tension that wrapped her chest like iron chains. She gathered a small bundle of belongings, a few clothes, a book of poetry she had memorized, and a locket with a picture of her late grandmother. The items were tiny comforts against the storm of despair that surrounded her. As she walked through the hallways of the mansion, she felt the weight of history pressing down. Portraits of ancestors stared down from the walls, their faces proud, stern, and unyielding. Generations of expectation had built a cage around her. And tonight, that cage was to be sealed with chains of cold gold. The streets of Eldoria were quieter than usual, the market emptying as the night deepened. Torches flickered along the cobblestones, casting long, trembling shadows. Alara walked with measured steps, her head held high even as her heart threatened to break. She had learned long ago that pride was a shield. Without it, the world would crush her entirely. The marketplace loomed ahead, a place she had visited only in fleeting glimpses. Normally, it was bustling with merchants, buyers, and the occasional rogue. But tonight, it was strange and empty, save for the shadowed figures preparing for the sale. Chains and ropes were laid neatly, the tools of commerce waiting silently for their victim. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She had been sold in her imagination 1,000 times, but seeing the reality made it sharper than the edge of any sword. Her parents had abandoned her to this fate, trading her like a commodity. She wondered if they even remembered she had a soul. Then, a sound cut through the night, a sound so sudden and piercing that every bird, every animal, every human froze. A howl. Long, wild, and commanding. It echoed through the streets and forests alike. It carried a weight that was impossible to ignore, a force that seemed to ripple through the very air. Alara stopped, her heart leaping in her chest. She had heard tales of the White Alpha King, but she had never believed them. The marketplace fell into stunned silence. The noble who had come to claim her froze mid-step, his eyes widening in disbelief. Torches flickered wildly as a wind unlike any other swept through the square. Then, from the forest beyond, a figure appeared, a man cloaked in white, riding a massive wolf whose fur shimmered in the moonlight. The Alpha King. He moved with the grace of a predator and the authority of a king. His silver eyes scanned the crowd, piercing, unyielding. And then he looked at her. Alara's breath caught. She had never felt anyone see her like this, not her parents, not her teachers, not even the quiet companions in her childhood. But his gaze was different. It did not judge her for what she lacked. It did not dismiss her for what she could not give. It was a gaze that recognized something she had hidden even from herself. A spark. A strength. A soul untamed. The noble opened his mouth to protest, to claim what he believed was his right. But the Alpha King's voice stopped him before a word could leave his lips. "Step back," he said, and even the wind seemed to obey. His words were calm, but they carried the weight of command. "She is not yours to take." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some whispered fearfully, some with awe. The Alpha King dismounted, his boots silent against the stones. The wolf at his side crouched low, ears alert, muscles coiled. The noble paled, realizing the truth. This was no ordinary man, and he would not be challenged lightly. Alara felt a strange pull in her chest. Fear, yes, but also hope. For the first time, someone was here to see her as more than a commodity. The Alpha King extended a hand toward her, not as a gesture of ownership, but of invitation. "Come with me," he said. "Your life does not belong to them. Your story has only begun." Her parents stammered, their authority shattered. "You can't, she is ours," her father barked, but his words had no power here. The Alpha King's eyes flicked to them, and in that instant, every lie, every betrayal, every cruelty they had inflicted seemed exposed under his gaze. He did not shout, he did not strike. His presence alone rendered them powerless. Alara hesitated, a torrent of emotions swirling within her: fear, disbelief, and an almost forgotten joy. And then, slowly, she took his hand. It was warm, steady, and real. She felt a pulse of energy, not frightening, but alive, like something in her had finally been recognized. The crowd parted as they moved together, the Alpha King leading her toward the forest, away from the life that had suffocated her. The wolf followed closely, a guardian of ancient power and loyalty. The trees loomed ahead, dark and mysterious, but they no longer seemed threatening. They whispered of possibilities, of change, of destiny. Alara dared a glance at him. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I am Lysandor," he said, his silver eyes meeting hers. "I am the one who chooses those the world has abandoned, and I have chosen you." A shiver ran through her, not from fear, but from wonder. She had never imagined a life where someone would see her as worthy, as necessary, as powerful. And yet, here it was, offered like a lifeline in the dark. As they entered the shadowed edge of the forest, a cold wind swept through the branches, carrying an unspoken warning. Whispers of curses, of trials yet to come, tangled with the scent of moss and earth. Lysandor did not falter, but Alara felt a tremor in her chest. Something was waiting in the darkness. She realized something that would test not just her courage, but the very strength of her soul. She tightened her grip on his hand, drawing courage from his calm, commanding presence. Whatever lay ahead, she knew she was no longer alone. But just as the forest swallowed them, a sudden howl shattered the night again, closer this time. Sharper, filled with a menace that made her blood run cold. And from the shadows, she thought she saw eyes gleam with intent, watching, waiting. Alara swallowed hard. The world she thought she knew, the world of cold parents, cruel nobles, and silent despair was gone. In its place was something larger, stranger, more terrifying, and yet more hopeful, something that might change everything, if she could survive it. The Alpha King, the White Alpha, moved forward without hesitation. The wolf at his side growled low, muscles taut. Lysandor's voice, calm yet full of authority, cut through the tension. "Fear nothing, Alara. This path is yours now. But the night is not yet done." And in that instant, she understood. Her story had only just begun. The forest swallowed them in silver mist, the pale moonlight filtering through gnarled branches. Every step Ilara took was soft against the thick moss, yet her heart pounded as though she ran on bare stone. The Alpha King walked ahead with calm purpose, his cloak brushing the ground, the wolf silently shadowing his every move. "Ilara," Lysandor's voice broke the silence, deep and smooth. "You need not fear. You are safe with me." She wanted to believe him, yet the weight of her past clung to her like shadows. Her parents' betrayal, the humiliation of being sold, and the years of being deemed worthless, pressed on her chest. Could she trust this stranger, this powerful, mysterious king who had appeared like a force of destiny? I don't understand," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Why me? Why not someone strong, fertile, worthy?" Lysandor turned his head slightly, silver eyes catching the moonlight. "Strength is not always measured in what the world values. Fertility is not the only form of power. You carry something rare, Ilara, a soul unbroken by cruelty. That is what makes you worthy." Ilara's fingers tightened around the locket she wore, her grandmother's face seeming to smile up at her from the small picture inside. A warmth spread through her chest, fragile yet insistent. For the first time, someone had seen her, not just her body, not just her silence, but her spirit. They walked deeper into the forest, the mist thickening, twisting into shapes that seemed almost alive. Shadows flitted across their path, and every so often, a whisper of wind carried voices, echoes of old curses and ancient magic. Lysandor did not flinch, nor did the wolf. Their calm contrasted sharply with the unease that prickled Ilara's senses. "Where are we going?" she asked, finally daring to break the tension. "To my kingdom," Lysandor said simply. "It exists beyond the edge of this world. A place where those who are forgotten can be chosen, protected, and transformed. You will see soon enough." Ilara swallowed, curiosity battling with fear. A kingdom that existed beyond the edge of this world? It sounded impossible. Yet the certainty in his voice made the impossible seem like fact. The forest began to thin, and through the mist, a faint glow appeared. Shapes emerged, tall spires of white stone, shining like silver in the moonlight. The castle rose from the forest like a dream, ancient, yet untarnished by time. Its walls seemed to hum with power, guarded by statues of wolves that seemed almost alive. Ilara could feel the pulse of magic in the air, strong and steady, a heartbeat that matched the Alpha King's own. They stopped before the grand gates, carved with intricate runes that glowed faintly. Lysandor placed a hand on the gates, and they opened silently, as if they had been waiting for him all along. Inside, the castle was both beautiful and eerie. The walls were white as snow, yet the shadows clung to every corner, whispering secrets of centuries past. Ilara's footsteps echoed in the vast hall as she followed Lysandor through corridors lined with tapestries depicting battles, kings, queens, and beings she could not recognize. "This place," she whispered, "it's magical, not magic," Lysandor corrected gently. "Power. A legacy older than the kingdoms of men. A kingdom built on choice, loyalty, and destiny. Here, you will learn that being chosen is more important than being born into a line." Ilara's heart fluttered. For the first time, she felt like she might have a future that mattered. Yet, with that hope, came an unease she could not shake. The castle's beauty was tempered by its silence, as if every stone held a warning. A sudden sound shattered the quiet, a voice, sharp and angry. "You dare bring her here?" Lysandor's expression darkened. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, cloaked in black, with eyes like burning coals. The air thickened with tension, and the wolf at Lysandor's side growled low, muscles coiled. "This is not your concern," Lysandor said, his voice steady but deadly. "She belongs to no one but herself, and to me, if she chooses." The figure laughed, a sound that cut through the hall like steel. You think she can choose? She is weak, unfit, and fragile. You claim to protect her, yet all I see is another pawn in your games. Alara felt a shiver crawl up her spine. The figure moved closer, a presence that seemed to pull shadows toward itself, dark and suffocating. Fear clutched at her chest, but Lysandor's hand on hers sent a pulse of reassurance through her. She is stronger than you understand, he said quietly. Stronger than anyone you've known. And you will learn that strength is not always measured by what the world esteems. The figure hissed and retreated, vanishing into the shadowed corridors. Alara glanced up at Lysandor. Who was that? An enemy of my kingdom, he replied. One who cannot abide those who defy fate. But you are not just defying fate. You are creating it. Alara's heart skipped. The weight of his words sank in. She had been sold, discarded, and ignored her entire life. And yet, here she was, standing in a castle beyond the world, chosen by a king who believed in her. They walked through a grand hall and entered a chamber at the heart of the castle. The room was vast, with a high vaulted ceiling and windows that opened to the forest beyond. Moonlight spilled in, illuminating a circle of runes etched into the floor. Lysandor turned to her, his expression softening. This is where you begin, he said. Here, you will learn who you are and what you can become. You may fear the path ahead, but remember, you are no longer alone. Alara nodded, a mixture of fear and determination in her eyes. She had spent so long being powerless, yet something inside her stirred a quiet, insistent flame that whispered she could rise above the past. Days passed, each one a lesson in patience, courage, and discovery. Lysandor guided her through the castle, teaching her not just the ways of the kingdom, but the ways of herself. She learned to listen to the whispers in the stones, to understand the pulse of life in the castle, and to sense the energy that connected all things. At night, they walked beneath the silver trees outside the castle walls. The wolf followed silently, a guardian and companion. Alara began to notice moments when Lysandor's gaze lingered not as a king commanding a subject, but as a man seeing another soul, fragile yet unbroken. You have grown stronger, he said one evening, his voice a soft murmur under the silvered sky. Stronger than you know. Alara's cheeks flushed. I am trying. I am learning. But I still feel. Her voice faltered, swallowed by the night. Afraid? He offered. Yes, she admitted. Afraid I am not enough. Afraid that one day, you might see I am weak, and leave me to the shadows again. Lysandor reached for her hand, holding it with a gentleness that made her heart ache. Fear is part of being human. But I do not see weakness in you, Alara. I see the courage of someone who has survived betrayal, sorrow, and loneliness. That is strength the world cannot take from you. A warmth spread through her chest, fragile yet insistent. She wanted to believe him, to allow herself to hope. Yet the memory of her parents' cruelty lingered like a shadow. Then, as if the night itself sensed the moment of peace, a sudden sound shattered it, a whisper, low and venomous, carried by the wind. Alara, she is mine. Her blood ran cold. The voice was close, yet unseen, a shadow threading through the silver forest. Lysandor's eyes narrowed, muscles tensing, and the wolf growled low, ears flat against its head. Do not fear, Lysandor said, his voice firm yet steady. Whatever comes, we face it together. But know this. The night holds trials for those chosen, and some truths are yet to reveal themselves. The path ahead is not safe, but you are ready to walk it. Alara gripped his hand, drawing courage from his calm presence. She had survived being sold, abandoned, and discarded. She could survive what came next, but even as she nodded, a chill ran down her spine. The shadows in the forest seemed to whisper secrets she could not yet understand, and somewhere in the darkness, eyes gleamed with intent, watching, waiting, hungry for what she had yet to become. Her journey had begun. And though she did not know the full danger, nor the full magic of the White Alpha King's world, one truth rang clear in her heart. She was no longer alone, and her story, her true story, was only beginning. The first light of dawn filtered through the high windows of the White Alpha King's castle, painting the halls in shades of silver and gold. Ilara awoke to the gentle sound of wind brushing through the towers and the low, protective growl of the wolf outside her door. She stretched, feeling the strange mixture of fatigue and excitement that came from nights filled with dreams she could not fully understand. Visions of forests, glowing runes, and shadows that whispered secrets she could not yet decipher. Her hand brushed the locket at her chest. The image of her grandmother gave her strength, but also a reminder of the life she had lost or had been forced to leave behind. She was here now, chosen, yet the fear that had been her constant companion tugged at her heart. Could she truly be worthy of the Alpha King's protection? Could she survive the trials that awaited her? The castle was alive with quiet energy. Shadows seemed to move just beyond the edge of sight, and the runes etched into the floors and walls pulsed faintly, as though aware of her presence. Lysander found her in the grand hall, standing in the center of a circle of light formed by the rising sun. His silver eyes, piercing and steady, softened for a moment when he saw her. "You awaken early," he observed, his voice calm, yet carrying the authority of one who commanded both loyalty and fear. "I could not sleep," Ilara admitted. "The dreams, they feel real." Lysander's gaze turned thoughtful. "Dreams are often more than they seem. They are echoes of possibility, visions of what is yet to come. You are more connected to the forces of this world than you realize, Ilara. That connection will be both a gift and a challenge." Ilara frowned, unsure whether to feel hope or dread. She had never been told she was special before, and yet she had spent her life being told she was useless. Now, the weight of expectation pressed on her like a mantle of ice. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face, a gesture so gentle it made her pulse quicken. "You are stronger than you know," he said. "Do not doubt yourself, because the world has doubted you. Your strength will shine when you allow it." The wolf at his side moved closer, nuzzling against her leg as if confirming the truth of his words. Ilara's heart softened. She had always been alone, yet here, surrounded by power, mystery, and creatures that seemed more alive than the people of her past, she felt a glimmer of belonging. Their days passed in training, study, and exploration. Lysander taught her to understand the magic woven into the castle and the lands beyond. He showed her how to sense the life in the stones, the hum of the trees, and the pull of the moon. Each lesson was a discovery, a revelation of powers she had never known existed. The more she learned, the more she understood that her so-called weakness, her infertility, her past rejection, was not a curse, but a potential, a source of hidden strength. But power did not come without challenge. Shadows lingered at the edges of her vision, whispering doubt and fear. Some nights, she would wake with a start, sensing eyes watching her from the dark, feeling the weight of unseen judgment. Lysander was always near, his presence steady, but he could not shield her from the trials meant to awaken her. One evening, under the silver glow of a full moon, Lysander led her to the edge of the forest that bordered the castle. The trees stretched tall and ominous, their branches like skeletal hands reaching toward the sky. The wolf padded silently beside them, muscles tense, ears alert. "Tonight," Lysander said, his voice low, "you will face your first trial. You must confront what you fear most. Not a creature, not an enemy, but the shadows inside yourself." Ilara's breath caught. She had anticipated battles and monsters, but to face her own fear? That felt far greater than anything outside. "Why me?" she asked, voice trembling. "Why not someone stronger, braver?" "You are brave," he replied simply, "but bravery alone is not enough. Strength is not only in the body, it is in the courage to face what others run from. That courage is rare. That is why you were chosen." They reached a small clearing, where the moonlight pooled like silver water. Lysander stepped back, allowing her space, but his eyes never left hers. "Step into the circle," he instructed. The trial will show you truths you have avoided. Do not turn away. Ilara hesitated, fear gnawing at her resolve. Then she remembered the wolf's steady presence, and the weight of Lysandor's gaze, filled not with judgment, but belief. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The moment her foot crossed the edge of the circle, the world shifted. The forest seemed to dissolve, replaced by shadows that formed shapes from her past. She saw herself as a child, small and fragile, hearing her parents' words of disappointment. She saw the noble who had once sought to buy her, grinning as if she were a prize. And she felt the pain, the loneliness, the humiliation that had shaped her life. Tears sprang to her eyes, but she did not flee. She remembered Lysandor's words. Courage is in facing what others run from. She forced herself to stand, to breathe, to meet the shadows with her own defiance. You do not define me, she whispered, her voice stronger than she expected. I am more than your judgments, more than your cruelty. The shadows wavered, flickering like candlelight in a gust of wind. A cold wind swept through the clearing, and for a moment, Ilara felt as though the forest itself was testing her resolve. Then a new vision appeared, not of her past, but of possibility. She saw herself standing beside Lysandor, not as a subject, not as a tool, but as a partner, strong and radiant. Together, they faced dangers that had once terrified her. She felt the warmth of his hand, the strength of his presence, and the bond that grew between them. A surge of energy coursed through her chest, and she realized that the trial was not punishment, but awakening. The power within her, the same power the world had dismissed, was rising. She felt it like a river of light flowing from her core, bright and unstoppable. The shadows dissolved completely, leaving her in the moonlit clearing, alone, but unafraid. Lysandor stepped forward, his silver eyes shining with pride. You have done well, he said. Not because you faced monsters, but because you faced yourself. That is the truest measure of strength. Ilara's chest rose and fell with effort, tears shining in her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt worthy, not because the world said so, but because she had claimed it for herself. Lysandor extended his hand, and she took it without hesitation. The wolf at their side let out a low, approving growl. Your trials are only beginning, he said gently. But know this, you will not face them alone. Whatever comes, we face it together. Ilara nodded, a warmth spreading through her chest. For the first time, fear and hope coexisted, not as enemies but as allies. She had survived the shadows of her past, and she was beginning to understand that her power, her courage, and her spirit were stronger than she had ever imagined. Yet, even as she stood there, a ripple passed through the clearing. Something unseen watched from the edge of the forest, silent and patient. Eyes glimmered like stars, and a whisper slithered on the wind. She is not yours yet, the voice hissed, distant yet unmistakable. Lysandor stiffened, hand tightening around hers. The wolf growled low, hackles raised. I know, he murmured. There are those who would seek to claim what fate has not given them the right to touch. They will test us, and they will not stop. Ilara's heart thudded. The warmth of courage battled the chill of impending danger. She had grown stronger, yet she understood that this was only the beginning. The shadows that had once haunted her life had not vanished. They had only retreated, waiting for the moment to return. And somewhere in the depths of the forest, the watcher remained, patient and relentless. Ilara drew a deep breath, steadying herself. She was no longer the girl who had been sold, abandoned, and dismissed. She was chosen, protected, and awakening to powers she had yet to fully understand. With Lysandor by her side, she felt capable of facing whatever trials the night or the world might send. The wolf padded silently beside her as they returned to the castle, its eyes gleaming with quiet loyalty. Lysandor's hand remained in hers, a tether of trust and strength, and though the shadows waited, the whispers lingered. Ilara knew one truth with clarity and certainty. She was no longer alone, and her journey had only just begun. The forest may have watched, the shadows may have whispered, And the trials may not be over, but Alara felt ready. Because she had chosen herself, and the White Alpha King had chosen her. The first light of dawn broke over the White Alpha King's castle, illuminating the forest in silver and gold. Alara stood on the balcony, her hair lifted by the gentle morning wind, the wolf at her side, eyes scanning the horizon with unerring loyalty. She had changed since the night she had first stepped into Lysandor's world. No longer the girl discarded for her infertility. She had discovered strength, courage, and a power she had never known existed within her. Lysandor approached quietly, his presence as commanding as the wind and as calm as the river. His silver eyes held a softness reserved for her alone. "You have grown," he said quietly, yet the words carried a weight of truth and admiration. "Stronger, wiser, and braver than I ever imagined." Alara looked at him, a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty swirling in her chest. I have tried, but I still feel unready. There is so much I do not know, so much I cannot control." He took her hand in his, the gesture grounding and reassuring. Control is an illusion. Strength lies in choice, in courage, in the willingness to face what comes. You have that. You have more than you realize. Their eyes met, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. A bond had formed, deeper than trust, stronger than fear. But peace, even in the castle's sanctuary, was fragile. From the edge of the forest came a sudden, chilling whisper carried on the wind. "She is mine, and I will have her, or the world will burn." Alara's heart leapt. She recognized the voice, the one that had haunted the forest, the presence that had tested her courage and sought to claim her. The shadows were returning, stronger and more relentless than before. Lysandor's grip tightened around her hand, his expression darkening. "We knew this day would come," he said. "The one who resents what fate has given you will not stop until every challenge is faced. But together, we can overcome it." The wolf growled low, muscles coiled, ready to defend. The forest itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the confrontation that was about to unfold. As the shadows gathered, twisting and taking vague shapes, Alara felt a flicker of fear, but it no longer paralyzed her. She had faced herself, embraced her strength, and discovered her hidden power. Now, she could face the darkness that sought to claim her. The figure emerged fully from the shadows, a tall, imposing form cloaked in black, eyes glowing with a cruel light. It moved like smoke, silent but unstoppable. "You should not have come here, Alpha King," it hissed. "She is mine by right of weakness, by the world's judgment. Step aside, or perish." Lysandor stepped forward, silver eyes flashing with unyielding authority. "She is no one's to take," he said, voice steady and deadly. "She has chosen herself, and she stands with me. You will not harm her." Alara felt her pulse quicken. She knew the danger was real, yet a strange calm filled her. The power she had discovered within herself now surged, a river of light flowing through her chest and limbs. She could feel the connection to the castle, the forest, the very air around her, responding to her courage. "You are stronger than you know," Lysandor whispered. His voice meant only for her. "Now show it." Taking a deep breath, Alara stepped forward. The shadows recoiled, as if sensing her resolve. She raised her hands, focusing on the energy within her, and sent a wave of light toward the dark figure. The power struck true, forcing the shadow to stagger, hissing in surprise and rage. Lysandor moved beside her, silver light radiating from his form, the wolf leaping forward to circle the enemy, teeth bared and ready. Together, they were a force neither darkness nor fear could withstand. The battle unfolded in the clearing, a dance of light and shadow, strength and courage, determination and defiance. Alara's hands glowed as she channeled her power, and Lysandor's presence amplified it, creating a shield around them both. The dark figure struck again and again, but each attack was met with their combined strength, each assault dissipating like mist in the morning sun. Finally, with one final surge of energy, Elara and Lysandor pushed the shadow to the edge of the forest. It recoiled, shrieking, and vanished into the darkness, leaving only echoes and a faint shimmer of malevolence behind. Breathless, Elara sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. She had faced the shadows of her past, the darkness of the present, and emerged, victorious. Lysandor knelt beside her, lifting her gently. "You have done it," he said softly. "Not just against the shadow, but against every doubt, every fear. You have claimed your destiny, Elara." She looked up at him, her heart full, her voice trembling. I thought I was worthless. I thought I would always be alone. But with you, I feel alive. I feel seen." Lysandor's hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "You are far from worthless. You are powerful, brave, and beautiful, not because the world says so, but because you have chosen to see yourself that way. And I see you, fully and completely." The wolf nuzzled her hand, a quiet affirmation of loyalty and trust. The forest around them seemed to sigh, releasing the tension that had hung like a heavy curtain. The castle shimmered faintly in the morning light, a sanctuary, a symbol of what they had fought to protect. Elara rose slowly, her hands entwined with Lysandor's. "What now?" she asked. "The shadow. It may return, but I feel ready." Lysandor smiled, a rare, warm smile that touched his eyes. "Now, we rebuild. Not the past, but our future. Together. Whatever comes, we face it as one. The kingdom, the forest, and even the shadows themselves, they will bend before the power we wield side by side." Elara's chest swelled with emotion. She had survived abandonment, betrayal, and despair. She had discovered her strength, her courage, and a power that the world had denied her. And now, standing beside the White Alpha King, she understood what it truly meant to be chosen, to be valued, to be loved for all that she was. For the first time, she felt a peace she had never known. But even as she embraced it, a faint whisper brushed her ear, carried by the wind through the trees. "Your story is not finished. Your destiny is only beginning." Elara shivered. But this time, it was not fear, it was anticipation. Whatever trials lay ahead, whatever shadows waited in the corners of the world, she knew she was no longer alone. She had Lysandor, the wolf, and the power within herself. She had courage, choice, and love. Together, they walked back to the castle, hand in hand, ready to face whatever the world or the shadows might send next. The forest behind them glimmered with the first rays of sunlight, the mist lifting to reveal a land of possibilities. And above them, the White Alpha King's castle stood tall, a beacon of strength, hope, and destiny. Within its walls, a new chapter had begun, a story of courage, love, and the power to shape one's own fate. Elara's heart swelled as she realized the truth. She was no longer a girl who had been sold. She was chosen, powerful, and free. She had found her place, not because the world gave it to her, but because she had claimed it herself. And the Alpha King, Lysandor, walked beside her. Not as a ruler claiming a subject, but as a partner honoring her courage, strength, and spirit. Together, they would face the challenges of tomorrow, and whatever shadows lurked in the corners of the world would find them united, unbroken, and unstoppable. Elara looked at the horizon, where the forest met the sky, and whispered softly to herself, "This is only the beginning. My story, our story, has just begun." The wolf at their side let out a soft, approving growl, and Lysandor tightened his hand around hers. The castle shimmered, the forest whispered, and the world waited, but they were ready. Together, nothing could stop them. And somewhere, far beyond the forest and mountains, the winds carried a promise that the chosen ones had awakened, and their destiny would shape the world.